Hey everyone, my name is Adam and I'm 28 years old. I'm from Colombia, but just 6 months ago, I couldn't speak a full sentence in English without struggling. Not even something as simple as, "How are you?" came easily to me. I was completely lost. Today, I want to share with you how I managed to learn English in just 6 months. No expensive classes, no trips to an English-speaking country, and no wasting time on methods that don't actually work. This isn't just my story, it's probably your story too. If you've ever felt frustrated, stuck, or embarrassed because of your English, then keep watching, because I've been exactly where you are now. And I promise you, if you follow my journey step by step, you'll know exactly how to improve your English too. My journey didn't start with motivation. It started with a big failure that changed everything. For years, I dreamed of working for an international company. My goal was to become a data analyst at a top tech firm. I loved numbers and I worked hard to be the best at what I did. After years of effort, I finally got my chance. I applied to a huge company based in Canada and received an email saying, "Congratulations, you're selected for an interview." I was so excited. I imagined myself living in Vancouver, earning a great salary and working with professionals from all over the world. But then the interview happened. I remember it like it was yesterday. I opened Zoom and saw three native English speakers looking back at me. They started talking, and honestly, it felt like they were speaking at double speed. I couldn't understand a word. The first question they asked was, "Adam, can you tell us about yourself and your experience in data analysis?" Panic hit me instantly. I knew what I wanted to say in my head, but the words wouldn't come out. All I could manage was, uh, yes, I am, um, data, I do analysis, uh, many projects, good, I am very good. They looked at me. There was silence. That silence felt like a knife in my stomach. They asked another question, but again, I couldn't answer. In the end, one of them smiled and said, "All right, Adam, thank you for your time." I knew exactly what that meant. I had failed, not because I wasn't good at my job, but because I couldn't speak English clearly during that interview. That moment made me realize the real power of English. It wasn't just a language, it was the key to my dreams. And right then, I didn't have that key. I felt ashamed, embarrassed, angry at myself. For years, I told myself I didn't need English, that being good at my field would be enough. But now I saw the truth. Without English, I was invisible. That night, I made a decision. I would learn English, and I would learn it fast. Most people, when they start learning English, do one thing first. They pay for expensive courses. I didn't do that. Why? Because I had already tried them before, and they didn't work. A year ago, I paid for an online English class. The teacher made me memorize vocabulary lists, do grammar exercises, and study boring rules. But after 3 months, when I tried to have a conversation, I still couldn't speak. So I knew that expensive classes weren't the answer. If I wanted to learn English fast, I needed something different, a system that actually works in real life. And that's when I started my 6 month method, which I'll share with you now. The biggest mistake beginners make is thinking they need more words. I used to think the same way. If I learned 1,000 new words, I'd be fluent. But the truth is, I already knew hundreds of words, yet I still couldn't speak. So for the first 15 days, I didn't study any new words. Instead, I focused on something much more powerful. I started using the words I already knew. Here's exactly what I did. I made a list of 50 survival sentences that I might use every day, like, "Hi, how are you?" Or, "Can you repeat that?" Every morning, I read those sentences out loud. Not once, not twice, but 10 times. At first, my tongue felt heavy and slow, but after 5 days, those sentences became automatic. Then I started speaking to myself in English whenever I was alone. When I took a shower, I said, "I am taking a shower. The water is hot. I feel relaxed." When I cooked breakfast, I said, "I am making eggs. I like eggs. They are easy to cook." At first, I felt silly, but I realized this was my private classroom. No one could hear me. No one could judge me. And in just 1 week, my brain started thinking in English. I also practiced 5 sentences a day from movies or real conversations, but I didn't just read them. I repeated each one 10 times, matching the tone, speed, and emotion of the speaker. This helped me fix my accent and sound more natural. By the end of the first 15 days, something changed. I stopped translating in my head. I could say basic sentences without thinking. I felt more confident, but this was just the beginning. After those 15 days, I started the real practice. I created a new plan, and this plan changed everything. I realized that when I tried to speak English, my brain was slow. I knew the words, but I couldn't put them together quickly. I needed a way to make speaking feel natural. So I started using what I now call the question and answer method. Here's how it worked. I asked myself a simple question in English like, "What did you do today?" Then I answered it immediately without thinking too much. At first, my answer was short. I worked, but I forced myself to expand. I worked on my project. I worked on my project for 3 hours. I worked on my project for 3 hours. Then I took a break. I worked on my project for 3 hours. Then I took a break and had some coffee. Every time I answered, I added more details. This trained my brain to think in English and speak without hesitation. Another example. What did you eat for breakfast? At first I said, I ate eggs. Then I expanded. I ate eggs and toast. I ate eggs, toast, and a banana. I ate eggs, toast, and a banana because I was really hungry. I ate eggs, toast, and a banana because I was really hungry. And I love eating a big breakfast. I did this every single day for at least 30 minutes. My speaking speed improved dramatically. My sentences became longer, and I stopped translating in my head. One of my biggest problems was pronunciation. Even when I spoke English, I still sounded like a foreigner. Native speakers understood me, but my accent was strong. So I used a technique called shadowing. This is how it worked. I listened to a native speaker from a movie, YouTube video, or podcast. I paused the audio after each sentence and repeated it exactly the same way. Same speed, same tone, same emotion. For example, if the speaker said, "It was a beautiful day, so I decided to go for a walk," I paused and repeated, "It was a beautiful day, so I decided to go for a walk." At first it felt difficult, but after repeating each sentence 10 times, my voice started to sound similar to the native speaker. After 1 month of doing this daily, my pronunciation improved so much that even native speakers started saying things like, "Wow, your English sounds really natural." Vocabulary was important, but I also knew that memorizing word lists doesn't work. So I used what I call the story method. Each day I picked 5 new words and created a short story using all of them. Then I read the story out loud 10 times and used the words in real conversations. For example, I learned the words excited, invitation, party, arrive, surprise. My story was, I was very excited because I received an invitation to a big party. When I arrived at the party, I got a huge surprise. It was my birthday party. I did this every day. After 3 months, I had learned over 1,000 new words without memorizing anything. One of the biggest problems learners face is thinking in their native language first, then translating into English. This makes speaking slow and unnatural. So I trained my brain to think in English. I described everything around me in English. When I walked outside, I thought, the sky is blue. The weather is hot. I see people walking. That man is wearing a red shirt. I asked myself questions and answered them in English. What am I doing right now? I am sitting in a chair drinking coffee and writing in my notebook. I also wrote a daily journal in English every night. At first, my sentences were simple. Today I went to work. I was tired. I ate pizza. It was good. But after 1 month, my writing became more natural. I noticed that I was no longer translating. English words came naturally into my mind. One thing I did that was simple but powerful was setting a rule. Every day I had to speak English for at least 2 hours. No excuses. If I had no one to talk to, I talked to myself. If I didn't have time, I spoke while cooking, cleaning, or walking. If I felt lazy, I reminded myself that English was my future, and I couldn't quit. Now that I had built the habit of listening and repeating, I wanted to push myself further. But I also realized something very important. Just listening and speaking wouldn't be enough. If I didn't understand the grammar and structure of English properly, I would make mistakes that confused people. So I started observing how native speakers structured their sentences. Every time I heard something I didn't understand, I asked myself why it was structured that way. For example, I heard people say, I have been learning English for 6 months, but in school I was taught, I am learning English for 6 months. That was my first big realization. The English we learn in school is often different from the English people actually speak. So I started researching the differences. I learned when people use the present perfect tense, why they say I have been learning instead of I am learning, and how small details like these made a huge difference in sounding natural. I wrote down common sentence structures and tried using them in my daily practice. One of my biggest challenges was prepositions. Why do we say on the bus but in the car? Why do we say at night but in the morning? I kept a small notebook and wrote confusing prepositions with examples. Whenever I had doubts, I searched for answers online or listened to how native speakers use them. To take it even further, I started writing a daily diary in English every night. I wrote about my day. At first, my writing was very simple. Today I went to work, I was tired, I ate pizza, it was good. But I wanted to improve, so I asked myself, how do native speakers write? I read blogs, books, and news articles, and noticed how they structured their sentences. Then I tried to copy that style in my diary. One thing that really accelerated my learning was shadowing. I found videos of native speakers, put on headphones, and repeated every word immediately after them, matching their speed and pronunciation. I did this for at least 20 minutes a day. In just a few weeks, my pronunciation improved dramatically. Another trick that helped me was watching English movies with subtitles. But instead of just watching passively, I paused after every sentence and repeated it. I focused on pronunciation, tone, and rhythm. Slowly, my English started sounding more natural. At this stage, I realized something crucial. English is not just about words and grammar. It's also about confidence. Many people know English but are too scared to speak. I made a decision. I would not let fear stop me. I started speaking to people in English whenever I got the chance. At work, at the store, with friends. I spoke even when I was unsure. And I noticed something surprising. People understood me. Even if I made small mistakes, they didn't laugh at me. This gave me the confidence to keep going. But then I faced my biggest fear, talking to native English speakers. I was terrified that they wouldn't understand me or that I would freeze. So I came up with a strategy. I prepared 10 common conversation topics and practiced them every day. How was your day? What do you do for work? What's your favorite food? I practiced answering these questions fluently. Then I took the leap. I joined an online group where people from different countries practiced English. At first I was nervous, but soon I realized everyone was there to learn, just like me. I made friends from different countries and we practiced together. This not only improved my English, it made learning fun. As I reached the final stage of my journey, I felt an unshakable confidence growing inside me. I was no longer the same person who had been rejected because of poor English skills. I had transformed on step by step through consistent effort, practice, and mindset. That same day, I decided to test my progress by having a deep conversation with a native speaker. I joined an online meeting where people discussed various topics. At first, I was nervous, but I reminded myself, I've worked too hard to doubt myself now. Then I spoke. The words came out clearly and confidently. I didn't struggle to find the right words. I understood what others were saying. People listened, nodded, and even asked me questions. It was an incredible moment. That was the day I knew I had achieved fluency. 6 months after I started, I applied for my dream job again. This time, I walked into that interview room with confidence. I sat in front of the interviewer, not as someone who feared English, but as someone who had mastered it. I spoke clearly. I answered every question with ease. I wasn't just speaking English. I was owning it, and I could see it in their eyes. They were impressed, not just with my language skills, but with my effort, persistence, and transformation. A few days later, I got the call. Adam, congratulations. You got the job. I couldn't believe it. My dream job, the same company that had rejected me before, now wanted me. My starting salary was $5,000 a month, more than I ever imagined earning. I stood there holding my phone, shaking, tears in my eyes. The first thing I did, I called my parents. Mom, Dad, I did it. My mother started crying. My father, a man who rarely shows emotions, simply said, "We always knew you could." And in that moment, I realized I wasn't doing this just for me. I was doing it for them too. With my first salary, I bought my father a beautiful watch, something he had always wanted. For my mother, I bought a gold necklace. She had sacrificed so much for me and our family. When I handed them the gifts, they refused at first. "We don't need anything, son." But I shook my head. "No, this is my way of saying thank you. Thank you for believing in me, even when I didn't believe in myself." That was the moment I understood. It was all worth it. Every struggle, every late night, every moment of frustration, every time I felt like giving up, it was all worth it. If this story inspired you, please like and subscribe to my channel. Easy English Podcasts. I'll be with you every step of the way. Let's do this together.